Yo, so guys, welcome back to another video, and this is another history reaction basically. And this one is Attack on Pearl Harbor 1941 by Monte Mayo. I've never heard of this channel, but shout out to him for making this video. And this was suggested a few times, but mainly the reason I'm reacting to this is because I just saw it pop up, and I was like, this is an event in World War II that I know about, and I've heard bits here and there, but I've never looked into this specific event. I say event, that's not the right word to use. But tragedy, or however you want to put it, that happened. And I just thought it's a good time to sort of get into this and learn more about history and to learn more about things that I'm interested in learning about, I guess you could say. But yeah, the video is Attack on Pearl Harbor 1941. I really don't know much about this. I just know it was during World War II. Did I say World War One? I swear I said World War II. I better have done. And it was Japan attacking the US and these small details, but I don't know the in-depth analysis, and hopefully with this video it can sort of teach me a bit more about it. But if you go on to enjoy this reaction, let me know some more history type videos you'd like to see in future, or just other videos in general. Just suggest videos you'd like to see and I'll be sure to do so in future. But yeah, let's just get into this video. Quick link to my Instagram and my Twitter and my second channel in the description if you want to follow and subscribe. All of those links are there for that. But let's get into this, man. Let's see what there is to say about this, about Pearl Harbor.
We interrupt this broadcast to bring you this important bulletin from the United Press. Flash, Washington. The White House announces Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Stay tuned to WOR.
See, I've not even seen pictures of it. Oh my god. Are these ships? They look like ships, but they look... Wait, what even are they?
1941, Japan situation. America and other nations have imposed an oil embargo on Japan, which means Japan cannot continue their conquest.
Oil.
No problem. Japan would just get the oil it needs from the Dutch Indies. Their underfunded and undergunned fleet will pose no threat to the Imperial Japanese Navy.
Oh wow.
And if their ally, Great Britain, joins the conflict, well, Japan will fight them too. Both nations are too occupied with the European war anyways. So, through their new conquests, Japan's demand for resources shall be met.
Japan are really beefing everyone. They were really beefing literally everyone in this war, weren't they?
Geography has cursed them. Look at what lays beside their vital supply lines. The Philippines, a U.S. territory. Although America is not officially allied with the British and the Dutch, they are on friendly terms. Japan cannot afford the risk of the U.S. entering the war while they are in the midst of their campaign. Their proximity to Japan's supply lines puts into jeopardy everything they are about to fight for. Basically, the Americans would be holding a dagger to Japan's throat the entire time they conduct their campaign, ready to commence hostilities at a moment's notice. Thus, they come to the conclusion that they must take out the Americans as well. This calls not only for an invasion of the Philippines, but also a preemptive strike on the powerful American fleet at Pearl Harbor. And so with that, history was set. Japan set its powerful Kido Butai to strike Pearl Harbor on the morning of December 7th. Now, the goal of the raids was as follows. 1. Sink a battleship. This was for propaganda purposes. Japan reasoned that if America saw their beloved battleships, symbols of their naval power, destroyed, their will to wage war against Japan would be shattered as well. 2. Immobilize the fleet for 6 months. The Japanese estimated that they needed 6 months to do all their conquests. Then they would be on the defensive and await the American counterattacks and wear them down, culminating in a decisive naval clash. So note, the Japanese knew they could not win a long-term war with America, so Japanese strategy revolved on them waging a short-term war. This was why attacking the fuel tanks or naval facilities at Pearl Harbor was not even considered in the planning phase. It was irrelevant to the 6-month goal. At Pearl Harbor were some 80 ships. There were 8 battleships, 7 of them in battleship role and 1 in dry dock. 8 cruisers were at Pearl Harbor, 4 of which were accessible to torpedoes, and dozens of destroyers and auxiliaries were docked elsewhere. Unfortunately for the Japanese, the 3 American carriers were all at sea and not in port that fateful day. The attack on Pearl Harbor would be carried out by 6 fleet carriers and its strike force of 350 planes.
Fucking hell. 350 planes. Are you mad?
The attack on Pearl Harbor would be carried out by 6 fleet carriers and its strike force of 350 planes.
Oh my... Was that like a regular sort of thing a country would do during the World War, like attack with this many ships and planes, or was this an overly excessive amount because they knew how how I'm guessing protected Pearl Harbor would have been? Maybe it wasn't protected actually, but still, I mean, you see the numbers and it's just like, bro, what the hell? That is insane. That's ridiculous.
Their crews had endured 10 months of training for this attack. In
So they
addition,
prepared
5
properly.
midget submarines would be tasked with penetrating the harbor and attacking in conjunction with the main airstrike. The attack would be composed of 2 waves. During the first wave, Lieutenant Fuchida
waves.
commanded a strike against the ships in the harbor. The key to the first wave was the 50 level bombers and 40 torpedo bombers, also known as Kates. Their torpedoes had been modified with wooden fins so that they could be effective in the shallow waters of Pearl Harbor. Their priority targets were the battleships and carriers at port. The first wave of 183 aircraft was launched at 6 a.m. The strike force approached Oahu and soon the formation separated into groups to attack their assigned airfields and targets. The sky was completely clear of American fighters. The Japanese had achieved complete surprise.
Is this when they kamikazed and stuff? I don't know much about that, but I swear, like kamikaze, like I don't know. I swear there's something to do with that in the war. I can't remember the full name of it, but something to do with kamikazes between Japan and the US. I don't know. I could be wrong, and I apologize if I am, but I swear there's something to do with that.
The dive bombers beat the torpedo bombers to Pearl Harbor, the first bombs hitting the southern tip of Ford Island minutes before even the first torpedo had been launched. Planes from Hiru and Soryu approached at 7:55. They were disappointed to discover that their targets, the carriers, were not in port that day. Lieutenant Nagai, leader of Soryu's air group, realized there were no potential targets, so he and his wingman pulled off. However, the remaining 6 attacked. They probably mistook the old decommissioned battleship, the USS Utah, as a capital ship, and they fired upon her. 2 torpedoes slammed into her before 8 a.m. The rest missed. One missed so badly that the USS Raleigh was hit. The Utah capsized at 8:12. The Raleigh almost suffered a similar fate, but prompt damage control prevented her from capsizing.
God damn.
Nagai went around Ford Island and launched against what he believed was a battleship. In reality, it was just a cruiser, the USS Helena. She was double berthed with an old mine layer, the Oglala. Its silhouette probably gave the impression of a battleship. His torpedo actually went under Oglala's heel and exploded into Helena's hull, damaging both ships. Nagai's wingman recognized that it was just a cruiser and decided to attack Battleship Row instead. The 8 Hiru planes didn't fare any better. Lieutenant Hirata and his wingman saw that there were no viable targets, so they headed for Battleship Row. However, the remaining 6 aircraft who were lagging behind got to see Nagai's attack on Helena and followed suit. 4 launched torpedoes, but they all missed terribly. The last pair
This is not going to
avoided a
plan
run
for
at
the
last
Japanese,
minute
is
and
it?
headed for the battleships. So now we have 4 Hiru and 1 Soryu plane maneuvering for Battleship Row, cutting right across the path of the other 24 torpedo bombers who are just coming in. In this photograph, you can see the opening stages of the attack. Both the Utah and Raleigh have been hit, and Utah is listing to port. At this moment, the torpedo runs against the battleship's half-beat.
Bro, how are these pictures taken? That's what blows my mind. I like Japanese people in the planes, or the soldiers in the Japanese. I don't even know how to say it. Taking pictures, or is this just like I don't even know how they take these pictures. I'm just kind of confused, but thank God they did, because you get a real view of how like this worked and how they did it.
Gun. You can even spot 2 planes finishing their bomb runs.
Jesus, man.
Due to the geography of Pearl Harbor, the torpedo bombers really just had one avenue of approach. If they had gone over the naval buildings, the turbulence would have thrown off their accuracy and limited their launch window. Therefore, the overwhelming majority of the Cape bombers flew single file down the southeast lock. The result was that instead of the attack being spread out, it would be disproportionately concentrated on the southern tip of Battleship Row, much to Oklahoma's and West Virginia's despair. 12 Akagi planes approached single file, 1,000 feet apart, starting at 7:57. All of Akagi's 12 planes launched against these 2 battleships, except one, which skillfully maneuvered and struck the California. The 4 Hiru planes from before joined shortly afterwards and launched against Oklahoma and West Virginia. Contrary to belief, the Japanese were not attacking with impunity. the defenders had taken advantage of the precious minutes warning afforded by the Ford Allen bomb blast, so that when the first torpedo planes of Akagi approached, many anti-aircraft gunners were already prepared. These vulnerable, slow-moving Kates had to make their torpedo runs under fire. 3 miles behind Akagi's strike was Kaga's air group. By now, the anti-aircraft fire was becoming more effective, and again, Oklahoma and West Virginia took the brunt of the attack. In the middle of their launch, that single Soryu plane from earlier swept in and got a hit on the California. However, one of Kaga's plane veered to the right because of this, but was able to hit the Nevada at 8:03. Kaga's air group was the only one to suffer losses. 5 of the last 7 attacking Kates were shot down. In this historic photograph, the torpedo attack is perfectly captured.
Bro, see, these photos just insane, man. Absolutely insane. You get a real view of history, man. This, I don't know how again, but you just see all this stuff and it's crazy to me.
You can see the torpedo hits on the Oklahoma, West Virginia, and the California. All of them are gushing out oil. In the background, you can see Hickam Field burning, and the Helena can be seen leaning against the Oglala.
I can't imagine how scary
And a
this
Japanese
is,
plane
man.
can also be spotted.
I really can't.
However, the attack wasn't executed as smoothly as hoped. An attack that should have taken less than 90 seconds stretched out over 11 minutes from first run to last. Some had to abort and redo their runs due to mutual interference, and the heavy anti-aircraft fire threw off the pilot's aim and caused them to over-concentrate on just 2 battleships. 21 torpedoes were launched at Oklahoma and West Virginia, over half of the available torpedoes. Oklahoma had 12 torpedoes launched at her. 5 hit her, and she capsized in 15 minutes. West Virginia was hit by 7 torpedoes, but prompt counterflooding prevented her from capsizing, and she settled to the bottom.
Oh my god.
California should not have sunk from 2 torpedoes, but her hatches were open for inspection that morning, which contributed to her sinking. And she was abandoned due to...
Bro, this stuff is just insane. It really shows you how scary this must have been. Like, you hear stories and you play video games that sort of show you, like there's Cold War out now. Like, they're good at emphasizing what happened, but they don't show you the true sort of like the true like disaster and like just chaos that would have actually gone on. And this is real. Like, these are real photos, and it just makes you realize, like, my god, the soldiers that were there, I can't imagine, man. But just looking at it, just looks like an apocalyptic type picture, man.
2 fires, and when she was reboarded, it was too late. Of the 36 torpedoes launched, only 19 achieved hits. That's a 48% hit rate. 10,000 feet above came Fuchida and his high-level bombers. Their mission was to take out the inboard battleships inaccessible to torpedoes. They came in groups of 5. They released their salvos and scored an impressive 20% hit rate. Unfortunately for the Japanese, out of the 10 bomb hits, about 6 were low-order detonations or malfunctions. That is an outrageous 60% dud rate. The Japanese aviators were greatly let down by their weaponry. The damage could have been deadlier. However, the distribution was effective. California was missed, but 2 ineffective hits on Maryland were scored. Both West Virginia and the Tennessee were hit twice, and there were 2 additional collateral damage hits on the repair ship Vestal, moored outboard of the Arizona. Vestal suffered severe flooding and had to be beached afterwards. But all of these hits were overshadowed by the 2 hits on the USS Arizona. The first struck her aft on the quarterdeck, and another landed near her number 2 turret. It caused a magazine explosion, which exploded with a great force, and a tremendous fireball was seen. She split in half and sunk in the harbor, taking more than 1,000 sailors with her. Heavy fire.
Oh my god. So this, I wasn't initially... that's insane. I didn't think so many people were going to be on board the boats at that point. Oh my days.
Burned for days. The explosion was actually caught on tape by Dr. Hackinson, who was on the hospital ship Solace.
Wait, I wasn't expecting this. Wait, what the fuck?
Solace.
Oh my. This is How are they able to have this footage? See, maybe I'm just thinking back to these times, and I didn't think they could record this type of stuff. I mean, how have I never seen this stuff before? Really? Oh my days.
Nevada was the only battleship not suffering heavy damage and capable of getting underway. She did so at 8:40 with the intention of heading out of the channel. Now, one of the mini-subs actually did make it into the harbor. The other 4 were unsuccessful. At 8:36, the sea tender, the USS Curtis, spotted a sub. The submarine fired at Curtis but missed. In return, the submarine was hit by a 5-inch shell. The destroyer Monaghan, which happened to be getting underway at this moment, saw the sub and approached with the intent to ram her. The sub turned and fired its last torpedo, which missed the destroyer. At 8:40, the sub was rammed and depth charged. She sunk with both crew members killed.
Mate, this is insane.
167 planes formed the attack of the second wave, of which 78 were dive bombers allocated to go against warships. Much was expected from these skilled pilots. However, their performance was disappointing. First, take a moment to see what they were up against. By now, the anti-aircraft defenses were up and ready to greet the dive bombers. Couple this with the fact that there was a 70 to 90% low overcast, their accuracy was destined to be off. But most importantly, these pilots were guilty of poor target selection. This was their priority list. These dive bombers with their general purpose bombs were well suited for attacking the 8 cruisers left in Pearl Harbor. But during the attack, about roughly 30 attacked battleships, only 17 went for cruisers, 16 attacked destroyers, and 12 attacked auxiliaries. The attack began at 8:54. The USS Nevada was caught in its escape during the second wave. The prospect of sinking the ship in the channel and thus blocking access to Pearl Harbor was a very, very improbable outcome. However, the pilots couldn't resist the opportunity, so they attacked from 2 directions. 14 to 18 valves dropped against Nevada. Nevada was hit 5 times by 9 o'clock. And at 9:10, she had to beach herself. This was the shining moment of the second wave. But it deserves to be criticized. Did they contribute to sinking a battleship? Yeah, but it was by the rarest of luck. Nevada succumbed not to Japanese bombs, but to poor material condition, critical design flaws, and a massively significant damage control mistake. And again, it still doesn't make it any wiser. The battleship should have been avoided.
Mate.
The attempt to sink Nevada in the channel was a waste of ordnance that could have been better employed against targets more vulnerable to their effects. 1 to 3 dive bombers went for California, scoring 1 hit. The USS Pennsylvania, the fleet's flagship, the only battleship in dock, was also poorly selected. 9 bombers went after her. She suffered only a single hit at 9:06. The real victims, though, were the 2 destroyers ahead of her, which received collateral damage. 2 hit the Cassin and 1 hit the Downs, heavily damaging both.
Bro, these bits of footage and these pictures are blowing my mind. Absolutely blowing my mind. Look at the destruction, man. Fuck. This is ridiculous. Just smashed.
So there could be a
pieces.
cultural explanation to why the Japanese pilots went for battleships. These young, 20-year-old pilots were going into the most significant battle in Japan's history. No one wanted to go back home and report that they attacked a simple cruiser or a destroyer. No way. They wanted to go for battleships, sticking true to their samurai spirit. But overall, the second wave attack was just scattered throughout Pearl Harbor, with many attacks missing their targets. A puzzling target selection was the destroyer USS Shaw, which was targeted by as many as 15 bombers. 3 bombs hit her, one of which unleashed a tremendous fireball. The reason to her being targeted was probably because she was in a floating dry dock and resembled a capital ship. On the west side, the Curtis, a sea tender, was inexplicably targeted. A damaged valve committed a suicide dive and crashed into her, and minutes later she was hit by a bomb. And lastly, the only hit on a top priority target was on the Raleigh. As many as 5 dive bombers went for her, still listing from that torpedo hit. She was hit once at 9:08. Also, we can add a near miss on the Honolulu, which caused minor damage. So only 1 hit and 1 damaged near miss were achieved on the dive bomber's highest priority targets. Against the 55% accuracy rate achieved during their training, the pilots got only 15 hits. That's a rather disappointing 19% hit rate. It was a poor performance of the second wave. It contributed nothing substantial to the fleet in Pearl Harbor. Also, as in the case of the armor-piercing bombs, the general-purpose bombs were deficient. But the second wave had the opportunity to be more damaging. Take, for example, the Phoenix here. a modern cruiser which was completely ignored by the second wave, not to mention the first wave of torpedo bombers. She was a suitable target. But even more telling was the fact that the naval yard was basically ignored. 4 modern 10-ton cruisers were tied up here, all of them packed so closely together. One could hardly have missed anything of value had the attack been concentrated here. On top of this, these ships were in a very vulnerable position. Flammable materials were scattered throughout, hatches were open, fire main systems might have been isolated. A bomb hit here would have caused a tremendous fire and been particularly devastating. And there was no smoke around this area at all. The Japanese missed a chance to deliver a more effective blow. Only about 10 dive bombers attacked this area, and as previously mentioned, only a damaged near miss caused any damage whatsoever. By 9:30, the attack was over.
Mate.
The attack left behind 2,335 people dead and another 1,178 wounded. Civilian casualties totaled 103, including 68 dead. 5 battleships have been sunk, but only 2 were permanent losses, the Arizona and the Oklahoma. The rest were repaired and served before the war's end. The other 3 battleships at Pearl Harbor suffered light damage. However, this attack didn't really cripple the Pacific Fleet. Soon the Japanese would realize that it wasn't these old, obsolete battleships that posed the real danger to them. It was the carriers that they had missed. They would soon feel their vengeance half a year later. To the list we can add a target ship and a mine layer, and the repair ship Vestal, which was beached. There was heavy to moderate damage to 3 destroyers, 2 light cruisers, and a sea tender. And there was light damage to a light cruiser. The Japanese also achieved great success on their strikes on the airfield spread out on Oahu. Over 160 planes were destroyed. They destroyed 2 to 3 times the number of aircraft that they had expected. The Japanese lost only 29 planes, 9 in the first wave, 20 in the second wave. A testament to the Americans' quick air defense. Also, none of Japan's 5 midget submarines made it back. Was the mission accomplished? Well, yes. All 4 battleships hit by torpedoes were out of the war for 6 months or more, and they had sunk 1 other battleship by bombs alone. And with that, the Kido Butai sailed back home, unscathed. World War II had just started for America, and the sneak attack left behind a temporary shocked nation, but a nation that afterwards would be resolved to finish the war with nothing less than a total victory on their side. The Japanese had awoken a sleeping giant.
I mean, wow. This was a very, very in-depth, view of what actually happened. And some of these videos and pictures were absolutely insane to me. Insane. I can't believe they've got footage of this. I didn't know, there was, really footage like that out there. So the fact that there was has blown my mind, but it does help you sort of realise just how, scary and crazy it must have actually been. Again, we hear about it and you know it's going to be, wild, insane. But, then you see pictures of it and it's just 10 times worse. It makes you realise, god damn. Wow, I tell you to go to work for History Channel, but they're too busy with ancient aliens and swamp people. Dang, the tilting of the map effect matched the programs. That's really cool. Have my subscription and I'm off to watch the rest of your videos. Yeah, shout out to this guy actually. He deserves it. He made a very, very good video here. Very good video. Single best video of the Battle of Pearl Harbor. I can't promise you 6 months of unprecedented victories after the war begins, but then afterward, there will be nothing but a slow, inevitable retreat. Admiral Yamamoto to the Imperial War Council, October 1941. I don't really know how that Japan would have thought would have went well. I don't really get how they thought it would have went well, but we know what happened next, and maybe I can do a more in-depth video on that. I don't know if people would like that or not, but I do enjoy these history type reactions. But it's just, you really do find out about how you find out about the true sort of tragedy of what really went on. So many deaths, and it's just god damn, and they were so unexpected as well. There could have been so much more, which thankfully there wasn't, but like he explained, there was points where they could have went for certain areas which would have been so much more vulnerable, and the disaster could have been so much more than it already was. But still a crazy video and a crazy tragedy to happen. But yeah, what are you guys' thoughts on this? Is this a good video out there? Like, again, people seem to really sort of like agree with what he said and saying that it is like a good sort of explanation of what happened, etc. But let me know your thoughts on this, and yeah, just hopefully you guys enjoyed, and until next time, like, subscribe, peace.